technology for 29 years, and he has advised more than 3,000 students in cybersecurity area. In addition to that, recently he has also been a research professor at Computer Science Department at NYU, Tandon School of Engineering, and he's been also senior advisor at Applied Physics Lab in Johns Hopkins. He's the author of 6 books. This is one of the books I happened to get his autograph. Here he wrote with his son, Matt Amoroso. It's called From Gets to Apps. If you get a chance, please take a look at it. He's also the person who motivated me to write my book. And you might have seen, like, maybe in Atlanta, I had a copy of my book. And I give all the credit for him, to encourage me on that. Has been several technical papers and patents in cybersecurity area. He has a BS in physics from Fairleigh Dickinson College, Masters and PhD from Computer Science, Stevens Tech. Dr. Sukhan Mahapatra happens to be from Stevens Tech as well. He also is a graduate from Columbia Business School. I know we have Dr. Surya Mahapatra, Columbia Business School professor and alumni here. He has served on board of directors from M&T Bank, NSA Advisory Board. Some of you might have read his articles of citation in Wall Street Journal in cybersecurity. He writes a lot of articles in CNN, New York Times, and Wall Street Journal. He has also the privilege of working with 4 presidential administrations related to national security. He has been to White House many times, and he has given many interesting talks about his experience there. He and his wife live in New Jersey, the proud parents of 3 wonderfully successful millennials. I think all of us have a lot of millennials. Without further ado, Ed, it's my pleasure to invite you.
All righty. A lot of masters and PhDs here, and not a single French or philosophy major, right? Mechanical. So I'm a computer scientist, and what we'll try and do, there's some young people here too, I'll try and do a talk on computing and computing security in a way that doesn't require that you be a computer scientist. Is that okay? And then afterwards you tell me how I did. See if I can explain to you some of the concepts. The other thing I'm going to do, I'll explain the title of the talk in a minute, is connect computing to some topical issues. So you can see a little bit of politics here. But my worldview is not Republican-Democrat. My worldview is there are people who understand and appreciate and do technology, and then there's everyone else. That's how I view the world. So you'll see that seep through as I sort of comment on some of the things that are going on in the world. Because we saw the crazy hacking, election hacking and other stuff, and I can't resist but get into it a little bit. And it's fun to do with engineers, because I think we have a similar worldview. Like, I see a lot of problems, and an engineer looks at the problem and tries to think of a solution, right? And that's what I think we need to be doing more. Less sort of complaining about problems and more fixing the things that are being hacked. Does that make sense? Like, when somebody's hacking a piece of equipment or a system that you build, instead of saying, stop hacking it, why don't you fix the thing that you built so that they can't? Does that make sense? That's kind of my worldview. Now, title, Random Walk. This is a little crazy, but here's what I do. Many of you may do this as well. And I'll back up. I'm colorblind. So it causes me to make all my PowerPoint charts about the same. Like, my wife makes fun of them, because they're usually pictures or they're gray tones, because I have to have everything the same. But it allows me to build a library of little talk charts and pieces of talk that are all fit together. So I put them in a big jumble. Like, if you know a little bit about computing, I think of it as a big, gigantic, infinite Turing tape, because I have thousands of them. And what I do with Random Walk is I go in and I pick little topics and I sploosh them all together into a talk, and they almost don't make any sense. But what I find is that it does make sense, because it all comes from my head, so I guess it comes from the common place. So it tends to jump around a little bit. Stick with me. Some people think it's like a speed dating talk, where we do this, then we do that, then we do this, and it's sort of like life, right? And that's how life is. Too many talks, in my opinion, lay out a complex topic and they try and make sense out of it, make it look nice and uniform and clean, and you come away thinking it's uniform and clean when it's not. Like, we do that with boards of directors in cybersecurity. We tell them, oh, it's actually very simple. We put in baby words, and they come away saying, oh, I totally understand it. But you've done them a disservice because it's not simple. It's very complex. And we're trying to make engineering too simple when it's not. And that sounds funny coming from a professor. But at any rate, here's the style. Ask a question, and then give an answer. Question, answer, that's how the talk will be. Now first, a preface here. And this is useful for this group, because you guys are all, I'm sure everybody in here studied physics. So think about physics for a moment. When was the best time to be a physicist? I think between 1890 and maybe 1930 or so. You know, really amazingly creative time, right? Einstein toiling away in his patent office, writing the 2 greatest technical papers ever. You know, creating a new way our world looked. So for 30 years, you can maybe say 40. Let's say 4 decades, unbelievable creativity in physics. And then what happened afterwards? Like a couple of you yelled out 40s. Well, after the 30s, we got very socially conscious of the implications of physics, right? And we thought, wow, like blow up the world, make bombs, all these very frightening things. But you also do amazing things. We can electrify rural areas. We can do all kinds of good, but we can also do some bad. And we saw scientists become very socially aware. In fact, I think that social awareness actually killed physics. Like a lot of you, we have teenagers in high school taking classes. Don't you think it's weird that physics, when we teach it in high school, still goes through Newtonian physics, which was developed hundreds of years ago, and then sort of tails off at electricity and magnetism, which was developed around the turn of the 20th century, and something developed 1905 to 1920 we call modern physics, 100 years ago. Crazy? It's like physics just stopped. They just got all crazy and everybody got so socially aware that I think physicists forgot to keep innovating. I hope I haven't offended any physicists here, but it's a weird concept. Now, let's go to my field, computing. My dad was a computer scientist. Like, I come from a weird family of everybody doing computer science. My sister, my dad, my son, my daughter does Girls Who Code. Everybody does computing, so I have all these crazy anecdotes. But my dad was at a conference in 1968, a NATO conference, and the term software engineering was coined at that conference, 1968. 40 years later, we had 2008, which was the iPhone, Twitter, all the crazy advances that happened there. 40 years of intense, deep creativity, right? Unbelievable, changed the world. And what's happened since then? We're getting a little socially aware, aren't we? Computer scientists are going, does a lot of nice things, right? We can transform healthcare, we can transform, our society, but we can also hack ourselves into the Stone Ages, right? I mean, we get cyber war and cyber warfare that could potentially have implications on safety of people's lives. It's the same thing, right? It looks like kind of similar stuff. So I noticed that Einstein had written a letter to Franklin Roosevelt in the 40s. Have you ever seen that? It'll come out. I have actually a picture I'll show you later. And he was warning President Roosevelt, you need to be paying attention to this nuclear science. There's real implications on our world. It was very hard to get the letter to him. It was sent it, didn't get there. Actually, I had sent somebody there to read it physically to him. So I was sort of inspired by that. And I ended up writing a letter to President Trump. Now, my friends all say, Ed, you're no Einstein. And my answer, my joke answer is, well, he's no Roosevelt. So whatever. I'll show you that later. That'll be the last thing we'll talk about here. But I want to get you into my mind frame here, okay? So we're going to try and do computer science concepts, one after another, blowing through some political stuff in here, and we'll see if you can follow. I think you will. So first, simple question. How can you stop meddling in elections? Now, I'm not saying call some country and ask them to stop. Those of you who do computing here, and I should hush those, you don't stop cyber attacks by calling all the hackers and saying, would you please stop? And they go, okay, and then they stop. Like, watch the news every night, and it's Americans saying we have to ask Russia to stop meddling in our elections. And as an engineer, I'm screaming at the television. You know, my wife is saying, you stop, please. Right? You don't stop these things by asking your adversary to cut it out. It's ridiculous. So here's a simple thing. Like, I teach my students that you build essentially an asset chart to figure out what it is you're trying to protect. Now, look at there's 3 rows and 3 columns. Let's start with the rows. The top row, these are the assets we have in our election, any country. At the top, you have LinkedIn, social media, websites, email. That's like the messaging that's going on amongst all of us. And it was hacked, apparently. I think it's pretty well established. So that's the first asset that has to be thought through if you want to stop meddling. See the middle row? That's the Democratic, Republican, Independent, all these political parties that, by the way, are run by young people who just graduated from Georgetown, you know, political science majors. Not run by professional IT managers, run by our kids. If you graduate from Georgetown in an N-1 presidential election year and you have a political science degree, there's a 1,000% chance that you'll go to work for one of the campaigns. You will. There's a law, I think, that you must go there. The bottom is infrastructure. So that's voting booths and databases and computers and systems and all the people that are on there. So if you want to stop meddling, you have to do something across the 3 rows. Does that make sense to you? It's not, when people go, oh, stop meddling by just encrypting. You go, yeah, but there's all these dimensions. It's like, you're engineers, you know, you think methodically about problems, and I haven't seen anybody do this. I look all over the place, and everybody has one little piece of it, but nobody's stepped back. System engineering needs to be applied to this. So let's look, let's go through each one. There is a field in computer security called digital risk monitoring. The thing on the right is from a company called Forrester. They're like a company that observes the industry. Now there's Gartner, and there are all these companies they observe, and they look at vendors who are doing work, and they graph them based on how much, I guess, they paid them off to be on the chart, or whatever. So there's a whole industry that looks at social media, that looks at the dark web, looks on the internet for evidence that there's tampering or fraud of your brand, your corporate brand. America needs that. So we need a big center, a lot of smart young people and help from these vendors looking to see who's tampering with the brands that are part of our elections. So it seems very simple. And I've talked to maybe 6 or 7 of the CEOs from those companies and asked if they'd be part of a group to put together a national digital risk monitoring center in Washington. We'll get some money and get it going. So that's one of the things I've been asking the White House to do. We'll see if they do it. So that's the top row. The middle one, do you ever notice we give Secret Service protection to a candidate as soon as they're viable? Well, why aren't we giving them IT security service as well? As soon as they're viable, they should have to turn over all their iPhones, all their computers, everything, and something like the NSA should be running the campaign election IT systems. That's what it should be. Like, that guy is trying to protect a candidate from being shot, but nobody protecting a candidate from being cyber shot, right? Yeah. So why don't we do that? That seems so obvious to me. And the Secret Service, give them the budget, and they can add whatever. But it seems natural. Anybody know those 2 people are? If you're a computer scientist, you do. Guy on the left is Whit Diffie, like a real super, like sort of the Henry Ford of cryptography. And the guy on the right is Ron Rivest from MIT, also a cryptographer. I had a chance to interview both of them at length for these courses that I teach. And I asked both of them, what do we do about local election infrastructure? And these guys, we're talking cryptographers who basically invented the public and private key infrastructure capabilities that you would use to secure an election, both of them said, use paper. This would be like asking Henry Ford, you know, hey, how do we transport things around? Horse and buggy, right? I mean, that's what they said. So they do not trust infrastructure to protect our elections. I'm not sure what that means. It's very frightening. Like, I always think, well, what do they think about, you know, nuclear power plants? I wonder what they would say to that. Like, you know, use paper for that? I don't know. But I think you do need to keep elections local. You need to keep them distributed. And you need to have some attentiveness around the people who are running the elections. I live up in Byram Township here in New Jersey. And the election team, I used to be the Board of Education president there, and I'm on the economic committee. I'm very active in my little town, so I know other people. But next door to me, this woman, Betty Spears, she's 96 or 7. She's been doing the elections in Byram for 50 years. And God bless her, I don't think she can see or hear. But we all love her. She was my next door neighbor. I love it when I see her, give me a hug, and she's always so nice. She's running the election, and nobody has the heart to say, Betty, you can't see or hear. Maybe somebody else should be helping here. You know, it's that kind of thing that I think we need to be more attentive to. I think there probably are opportunities for elections to be kind of messed with. It doesn't cascade, like if somebody hacks my wonderful Betty Spear in our election in Byram, it's not going to spill over to Parsippany. But, you know, you can see some problems. So election meddling, system engineering approach, those 3 levels. Intelligence community, so NSA, CIA, what if they hired, remember I showed you that chart with the things, what if they hired like Gartner to do that for intelligence community? Here's what they'd come up with. These are how good the nations are at hacking. There are 5 countries up there that can hack everyone, anytime, with 100% success, and that should freak all of us out. Like, Russia, US, China, Israel, UK are on record saying they can hack 100% of the time anything they want for any purpose under any circumstances. Don't you think that's a little weird? Now, does anybody in the room know who Roger Bannister is? Raise your hand if you know that name. Okay, good. Runner. So Roger Bannister ran 4-minute mile. And before he ran the 4-minute mile, isn't it weird that nobody could? And right after he did, what happened? Everybody could run a 4-minute mile. So when I see that, when I see Russia saying, we can break into anything, and the US saying the same, hackers hear that. And there's this Bannister effect of, if Israel can break into anything, I guess I can too. India's a little too low there. You guys are not hacking enough elections. By the way, I made all this up. I just put the dots there. This is not from some think tank. This is me. But I think it's good to be a little lower. To be honest with you, this is not the badge of honor to be on the top right there. This is like, you're threat actors. Like, just erase global actor, put criminal. That's what you're dealing with here. You get the point. Oh, this is not a very controversial topic. So why couldn't the Russians find Hillary Clinton's 33,000 emails? I know, by the way. So I'm going to show you. Okay, now, we're going to start with a couple of basic computer science concepts. And there's a lot of people here who do computer science, but let's start with this. Here's what a perimeter is. A perimeter in a company means I set up all my computers to trust each other. So this computer and that server and your PC, they can all connect and share without having to authenticate or do anything. We do that in a company, and when we do that with a big group of computers, the circle we draw around that is called a perimeter. So if you've ever walked into any company in the building, you walk in and they'll say, oh, you're on our network. That means the local area network with all their computers that trust one another. So if I break into one, I get all of them. Does that make sense? Like in my home, like in my house, when my kids were small, seemed like it was protected from the neighborhood somehow. But now my kids, millennials, I'm eating my cereal in the morning and there's kids walking through, and I said to my wife, who's that kid? You know, there's people coming and going. It's like I have no more perimeter. I can't leave my wallet on the table anymore. I trust the kids, but it just seems weird if there's people coming and going. Some of you may have homes like that, where there's always people wandering around, kids that I never saw in my life. So businesses are sort of seeing that now, and they realize that a perimeter isn't secure. And by the way, businesses are global, so it means a computer in Alaska might be trusting a server in Australia. So I get a break-in in Australia, and something in Alaska is now vulnerable. Does that make sense? It's a perimeter, and that's how we draw it. The dots are servers, PCs, computers, and the big line is the perimeter. So one of the things we've done in computing, see up in the top left there? I guess that's someplace in Canada or something. That little dot, watch when I push it up, it goes, boop, whoops, it goes up there, there, there. You guys see what I'm doing? That's called isolating a computer or isolating a server, and we call it micro-virtualization. That's where you take a piece of infrastructure that you want to protect and you move it. It would be like me taking my wallet that's sitting on the table in my home and opened all these kids, and I pick it up and I go to the bank and I put it in a vault at the bank and I lock it and I go home, and there's no kids that are going to touch my wallet, right? It's out there. Every computer scientist on the planet agrees that that's right. And it's called distributing. So in computing, if you're taking one of my tests, you know that if you write a distributed system answer, it's always right. Distributed is always better, and so on. So this is distributing. Well, Global State Department, the US State Department, has a perimeter that looks like that. And it's the most complex perimeter in the world, because those dots that are in there are in countries where you've got an ambassador who thinks they're the king. When you're an ambassador, it's capital A, and you could be ambassador to Albonia, that's the Dilbert country. If you're there for 5 minutes, you're a Madam Ambassador for the rest of your life. So it's a big deal to be the ambassador. When you run a consulate or an embassy, do you feel like listening to a bunch of wonky cybersecurity people back at the State Department, Foggy Bottom, you know, they studied it, you know, wherever they studied, and they're going to tell you how to do security? You don't listen to them. Do what you're going to do. And then a foreign leader comes in, and you're about to show a video, a glowing video of the foreign leader. The network is down, and somebody says, what are we going to do? And they go, well, there's Wi-Fi from the store next door. And they go, snap into it. And they do. And the visitor comes in and the video plays well. And now you think that Wi-Fi bathing an embassy is not rigged? Of course it is. They do it, they do it. And then there's this concept called a SCIF, a Secure Compartmented Information Facility. In the most remote consulates and embassies, the SCIF door is propped open and party supplies are stored in there. So you're telling me those places are not compromised? It's a joke. So if you have that, and Hillary Clinton's email when she was running State Department is sitting, I put it in Los Angeles, could be anywhere. If it stayed there, every state actor owns the State Department's network. Google it. They're had. Everything on that network has been stolen and compromised and lost. If you're in the administrative network, you're compromised by some miracle of accident, because I give them no credit for doing this on purpose. She happened to move her email to a server in New Jersey, like for whatever reason, it had nothing to do with computer science. They just moved it. The Russians couldn't find it. Because they own all the official, if it was done officially. Now my horror in all of this was that the Trump administration would say, enough of this. No more isolated servers. Everything back in this dangerous, horrible thing that has been compromised by every nation. You know that's wrong. So again, computing forgets itself. It's amazing how fragile our understanding is when we take something we learn in theory and apply it in practice. If you ever read the readings or the writings of Richard Feynman, like the greatest physicist in my mind, he always talks about that. He says you have students and you explain something to them, and they get it, and they write down an answer, but the minute you ask them to apply it to something, their knowledge is so fragile. It just doesn't pop out. So here, so obvious that isolating servers is a better concept than putting it in a big perimeter, but I never heard it mentioned once through the whole, all this rigmarole about, you know, putting people at risk by isolating servers. My first hack at age 10. We have anybody under 10 here? I'll be a couple.
Right here.
There you go. A couple. So this is the first thing I ever hacked. That's the Sportsman Shop on Route 35 in Neptune City. It's a gun shop. It was. And they had a soda machine. If you share a generation, you remember soda machines used to look like that? You could open that door. You could actually get your hand on the bottle, but you put a quarter in and the membrane would open up and you pull the bottle out. So I figured out, I'm pretty sure I was somewhere between age 8 and 10. I knew I'd do this. Nobody told me this, but I invented it. I would open the thing, take a bottle opener and a straw, and drink out all the soda. Machine learning. Probably heard about this? So there is really good artificial intelligence, but here's what happens. There's all these scientists here. New sciences start with the same goal of creating magic, making us all live forever, creating potions, predicting the future. What did Newton do between like physics and calculus? Does anybody know? Alchemy. He was an alchemist. He wasted the best years of his life trying to develop potions to do magic. Go look. Right? That's hard to believe. So scientists go nuts when they come up. They have all this gobbledygook that has to be pushed out. What's the gobbledygook of mathematics that got pushed out? Numerology, right? What's the gobbledygook of astronomy that got pushed out? Astrology. What's the gobbledygook of chemistry that got pushed out? Alchemy. And on and on and on and on. You could argue what the alchemy of computer science is. Still emerging, still too new. But artificial intelligence is trying to make sense. If you go back and look in the 1950s, the movies like Twilight Zone or these other Outer Limits, what the computers don't look like these zombies. So take me to your leader, I will take over the world. They're like this crazy concept of AI taking over. And you even have a lot of very responsible scientists, Elon Musk and others, saying artificial intelligence is going to like take over the earth and go, you know what they're talking about. It's ridiculous. Human beings misusing technology will ruin our earth, not computers taking over. That's the oldest nonsense ever. But at any rate, I've been looking at machine learning deeply, talking to companies, and understanding neural network. My dad's PhD was in tessellation automata, which has been feeding instructions to these massively parallel arrays of computers. So I've been doing this as a little kid. I'm thinking about this. And I want to show you what a lot of people are calling machine learning, and it's not. It's an example, sort of the alchemy. I'm going to write some code here. But if you don't do code, you'll follow. So if wind is